Hi guys, welcome back to the pit. In my last video, I showed you how I built the structure of the garage tile for the game Zombicide. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I painted and weathered the tile's exterior. So today I'm going to go over how I painted the exterior, including the revealed brickwork, painted various external components such as trash cans, rubbish, etc., how I created the signs and graffiti, how I fixed the components to the tile, including the building, and the final weathering and detailing. First off, as I decided to go with white for the garage, I gave the building a few coats of white paint. Once I was happy with that, I used a dark red paint for the sections of revealed brickwork on the building's facade. Next, I selected random bricks and then coloured them in a dark maroon. I then did the same thing again, but with a very light brown. And then again with a light red. Next I painted and highlighted the window using it grey. Then it was time to dirty the building up a little bit using some brown wash. I then used a wash for rust effects, mixed with rust pigment to create some streak marks. I start by painting vertical lines from the object using a fine brush. Then, using a large wet brush, I wash those lines out slightly with a few downward strokes. Next, I give the brickwork a black wash. I would go lighter than this in retrospect, as you don't want to wash out the colour too much. For the brickwork mortar, I mixed equal parts white and grey pigments. I then added a touch of water and PVA glue and mix them together. And once that's mixed, I use this mixture as a wash over the brickwork. As this dries, the pigment will settle into the mortar lines or the crevices, leaving the brick faces revealed. Once the mortar has dried, I highlight the brick faces, ensuring not to cover the natural fade between the mortar and the bricks. Now onto the components. To create some clutter on the footpath of the garage, I'm going to be using a 28mm scale trash can and 2 trash bags made by a company called TT Combat. After cleaning and priming these parts, I give the trash bags a coat of German grey. Then I give them a black wash. Once the wash is dry, I then dry brush the trash bag with a mix of German grey and white. I gave the trash can a black undercoat and then a coat of oily steel. And once the paint was dry, I then applied a soft tone wash. I highlighted the protruding areas of the model. Then, with a rough bit of sponge, I stipple on some rust-coloured pigment mixed with pigment binder. Next, it was time to paint the garage door. After I had cleaned and primed the garage roller door that I built in my previous video, I gave it a rust-coloured undercoat with my airbrush. After this, I coated on a protective layer of matte varnish. This will allow me to chip off the next coat of paint while preserving the rust colour underneath. Then, over the top of the varnish, I apply a coat of hairspray. Next, I mixed white and sky blue to create the final coat of paint, which I apply via airbrush. Then I added a bit more white to the mixture to create the sun-bleached look that we saw in the inspiration photo. Now time for the chipping. I first wet the door using an old wet brush and let it soak in. This apparently activates the hairspray underneath the top coat and loosens it up. This will allow me to remove chips of the top coat of paint realistically, while preserving the varnished rusty steel colour underneath. Once the door is nice and wet, I achieve this by rubbing the brush against the ridges of the garage door repeatedly. Once I was happy with the chipping, I applied a blue wash. Then, using the technique described earlier, I create rust streaks on the door using rust wash and rust pigment mixed together. I then blend or wash out these streaks with another wet brush using downward strokes. I actually repeat this process a few times until I'm happy with the results. Then to finish it off, I stipple on some very bright red rust pigment onto the large chip areas. I then colour the AC unit white, apply a dark wash, and then stipple on some rust pigment. Now onto the signs and graffiti. I printed out multiple tyre shop and parking signs, which I simply cut out, weathered with some dark brown paint and a rough sponge, and stuck to various parts of the building. As for the graffiti, I used paint pens to create the graffiti outlines. I was able to then rub those outlines while they were still wet to create paint streaks. I then filled in the outline with regular paint and included a bit of shading. I used this process to create clusters of graffiti on various spots of the building, with some pieces overlapping. Now it was time to fix all the components to the tile. I started with the building window. I cut out a piece of clear card that would fit perfectly into the window frame, and then I decided to create some damage. With a hobby knife, I lightly etched crack lines emanating from an impact point. I then etched concentric circles around that impact point, creating a kind of spider web. I then glued this into the window frame. I then fixed the building down to the tile using pins and liquid nails. Next, I glued the office door, which I built in a previous video, into the door frame. To fix the garage door, I drilled 2 small holes at the top where I superglued in pins. I then applied some wood glue to the pins and pressed them into the foam above the garage door frame to fix it to the building. Prior to fixing the components to the tile, I decided to add a little bit of dirt pigment to the base of the facade walls, as these spots might be hard to reach later. I add the same pigment to the windows to give the appearance of years of accumulated dirt and dust. I was now ready to fix the terrain pieces to the base and glued down the trash can, rubbish bags, and some cardboard boxes into random positions. It was now time for some weathering. I mixed together a large tub of dirt pigment with water and PVA glue. I then applied and blended this pigment wash across the road and sidewalk. I also applied the pigment wash onto the terrain components to make sure that they blended into the environment. I then scattered some leaves across the road and sidewalk while the wash was still wet. I then applied a bit more of the wash, along with a bit of extra PVA glue to the leaves to ensure that they stay fixed to the ground. I then added blobs of PVA glue to positions that I wanted to add some grass tufts. Now to add a bit of rubbish or trash. I printed out pages of miniature food packaging boxes and labels, as well as newspapers, and cut them out. I then scattered the papers and packaging across the road and sidewalk, fixing them with craft glue. With a few of the papers, I also applied the dirt pigment wash. Finally, I added some ivy to the facade to create an overgrown look. Here I used scrim foliage by foreground, which I fixed using PVA glue. So there we have it. That's the garage tile exterior completed. If you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching. And if you like what I'm doing, please remember to like and subscribe. And also stay tuned for my next video where I'll show you how I detail the interior rooms of the garage tile. And please remember to check out Pen and Paper online. They sell a great range of terrain and miniatures, and if you use the link I've provided in the description, you can get 10% off. Thank you, and see you next time.